I fear I've had a few espresso martinis, and I also fear that the espresso is working, but the martini part of it is not. So what a good time to yap about my favorite books from 2024. I have read 157 books this year. We're gonna go over the best and the worst that I read of each month of this year and just give you kind of like a little rapid fire review on them. The best book of January goes to The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. Just so funny, it's so fun. I was kicking and giggling the entire time, and it's not super spicy or anything like that. So this is perfect for low spice readers who just wanna have a good time. 300 pages basically on the dot. And if you need a one sitting read, this is going to be the one for you. I absolutely loved this, and their banter was just so freaking good. My least favorite book of January was The Never King. This is like a Peter Pan retelling, but like make it dark and spicy. And it's really quick. It's almost like a novella length. There was just something about it that didn't really get me and didn't want to make me continue going with the series. It was fun while it lasted. It just like didn't really do it for me. The best book of February was absolutely Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas. This was my Throne of Glass era of the year. I read this like almost 700 page book in a literal day. I think this still stands to be my favorite book of the series, leaving out Kingdom of Ash because that book is like almost in a whole league of its own. This was like 6 stars. This is the book that I fell in love with Manon and Dorian. It was just very well written, very gripping, very exciting. I absolutely loved every single second of it. My least favorite book of February, y'all don't come for me, was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I did not like this. I do not understand the hype. I listened to it on audio, which maybe one day I could be convinced to read it, but like I was so bored. March was a really tough month for me in general this year. I was having a lot of, I don't know, life revelations, and like I started therapy and a bunch of other things happened in March. I did read Kingdom of Ash. I will say this book sent me into a little bit of a spiral about a few things that I needed to handle and deal with myself. So I started going to therapy after I finished this book. So thank you, Sarah Janet. I will be sending you my therapy bill. But this hands down was the best book of March. I was relieved when it was over because it was so emotionally draining to read this book because there was so much going on to all of the characters, and I was so in love with every single one of them. By the time that it was over, I was just relieved that they wouldn't be suffering anymore and that I wouldn't be suffering anymore, because this book is an emotional roller coaster. I've never felt so connected to characters in my life, actually. This book is like a whole league of its own. I really can't think of one page that like didn't need to be in this. My worst read of February, unfortunately, was Daisy Hates. Please don't hate me for this, you guys. I wanted to love this so much, and I know you're either a Magnolia girl or you're a Daisy girl. I'm definitely more of a Magnolia and BJ girly. I just did not like this. The ending to this was so dumb for me, and I realized that these characters are like emotionally immature and like have a lot going on and are very toxic and whatever, but I just feel like we could have come up with any other plan than the one that she did. The only redeeming quality of this book and Daisy and Christian's story is honestly Julian. If it wasn't for him, I think I would be so bored and infuriated by these characters the entire time. The third book definitely made it worth it to continue on with the series, and I did like The Great Undoing, but this just really was a miss for me based on all the hype that I had seen on TikTok and all other forms of social media. I don't know, it just like did not do it for me at all. Moving on to April, the best book that I read was Wild Love, hands down, by Elsie Silver. Elsie can just do no wrong to me. I love A Grumpy Sunshine. I love A Single Dad. I love everything about this book, and this really gave me Things We Never Got Over vibes. Like there's a lot of romances these days where we're just kind of like checking tropes off like on a list just to say it has these things in it, and this book did not feel that way, even though it had a lot of the things that we all know and love. My least favorite book of April was Seven Summers by Paige Toon. I have never heard anybody really talking about this book. It was republished and it's like a little bit older. I thought it was gonna be like a fun beachy read, perfect for like the upcoming summer months and just give me like the warm and fuzzies. That was not it at all. This book was 100% just pain and suffering the entire time. Nothing happened in the whole book, and then every resolution that you were looking for happened in the epilogue. I didn't understand the structure. I didn't understand what she did to the characters, and I also didn't understand what the point of Tom's storyline was, because literally he didn't even need to exist, but the author made him suffer so bad. I had a really strongly worded review on Goodreads of this book. It like really threw me for a loop. I wish I could get the time that I spent reading it back in my life, because it was literally a complete and utter waste of time. The best book of May is gonna go to The Pucking Wrong Number by C.R. Jane. I am obsessed with this book. I am obsessed with Lincoln. He literally got her name tattooed on his you know what I mean? He's low-key a little bit of a stalker and low-key a little bit of like a criminal. That's what makes dark romance fun. Yeah, it was just like a good old time. And if you haven't tried like a dark romance before, I feel like this would be a good one to start with, just because you're kind of like diving into some of these like dark romance tropes that everybody knows and loves, but it's not super heavy on any like unaliving or any like crossing of lines or anything like that, besides the stalking and the kidnapping and etc, etc. You'll giggle the whole time, you know what I mean? I ended up giving it 5 stars. It was so much fun. All right, my least favorite book of May was Hunt Me Darling. I wish I would have never seen this book on any social media ever, because I hated it. I've had a lot of dark romance flops this year, I feel like, where I like was really having high hopes for it and then it like just didn't live up to my expectations. This is about an FBI agent who ends up being on like a case for a serial killer, and there's 2 of them, and she kind of like discovers who they are, but there's also like familial ties and like, I don't know. And the FMC was honestly so freaking stupid the entire time that I thought this book was insufferable. I read it so that you don't have to, so at least there's that. The best book of June was This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I love Carly Fortune's books. I know they're kind of hit or miss for a lot of people, but man, this really got me in my feelings. So this falls around our FMC who visits Prince Edward Island every summer with her best friend, and her best friend has a really hot brother named Felix. Or they have a little like meet cute where they didn't really realize who each other were, but they were like really attracted to one another. They hook up a few times and they have a sort of like forbidden secret romance going on where they kind of get together every summer, have a good time, and then go their separate ways for the rest of the year. And I don't know, it just felt so sweet and realistic. And Felix, he's just so real and honest and like really knows what he wants. He just says some of the sweetest, most amazing things I have ever read in a book. I feel like anybody would like this. This does have a little bit of spice in it, but it focuses more on the emotional part of it with like a little bit of fun in there. My least favorite book of June was Sovereign. This one, man, I had really high hopes for it because it's a dark cowboy romance, but it just really missed the mark for me. There's something about the MMC that just made me want to like vomit. This had a lot of really good bones as far as like a dark romance book goes. The execution of the MMC just made me literally want to gag because he was just like gross. He was marking his territory with his, you know what I mean, over obsessive, overprotective, and like just didn't do it for me personally. I would be open to more dark cowboy romances in the future. This one was not a good introduction. My favorite book of July, and maybe the year honestly, was Play Along by Liz Tomford. This is sports romance done right. This entire series, the Windy City series, is a must read for people who want to get into sports romance. I just don't think that there's anybody that does it better than Liz Tomford. There was something about Isaiah Rhodes being so like sunshiny and just such like a beautiful person, but also like kind of demanding and like will tell you what to do kind of thing when the time is right. It's very relatable, even though they're in a very unrelatable circumstance. Isaiah Rhodes is probably one of my top book boyfriends ever. This is basically an accidental Vegas marriage, but Isaiah's been obsessed with Kennedy the entire time. She is sort of like an athletic trainer for his MLB team, so they have a forced proximity thing going on, and then they enter in this accidental Vegas marriage that then turns into a marriage of convenience for publicity and things like that. It is a smash. Least favorite book of July was Bane by LJ Shin. I'm just starting to realize that I don't think LJ Shin's writing is for me personally. The guy Bane was just like insufferable, and I feel like a lot of her MMCs speak very immaturely for people who are like old. I ended up DNFing this book. I didn't even finish it. I don't even really know what the full thing is about, to be honest. I read about 35% of it. He's basically hired on to be this girl's sort of like boyfriend, like to get close to her kind of thing. So he kind of like inserts himself into her life, and it's like for a job. Overall, I just didn't even think I could continue with the book, so I DNF'd this one. My favorite book of August was Swift and Saddle by Lila Sage. This is short and sweet and just a good time. I think I read it in like one sitting. Lila's just created this like comfortable, really cozy ranch setting that I absolutely devour every single time. It follows around Weston, who's a cowboy on his family's ranch, and then Ida, who has been hired on to basically renovate the Blue House as sort of like a B&B for the property. It's Weston's sort of like dream business venture to kind of put a little bit of himself into the family ranch. It's one of those books that's just gonna end up being a comfort read for me that I recommend to literally everybody, because there's no way that you read this and have a bad time. My least favorite book of August was Sinner by Sierra Simone. own. I actually didn't mind this. I listened to it. The audiobook was really good, but the Catholic thing is just not my vibe. She is in school to be a practicing nun, but before she takes her oath, she wants to sort of experience everything that life has to offer. So she asks her father's best friend to sort of help her explore sexuality and her body and like whatever, because she's comfortable with him and has known him her whole life. This is my first book in this series that I've read. I don't really mind reading interconnected standalones out of order. It doesn't bother me. So I haven't read Priest yet. I don't know if I'm going to. The religion thing just like isn't my vibe. The best book of September is hands down gonna be Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. Weston kind of gives me the same vibes as Isaiah Rhodes a little bit. Like he's a cinnamon roll, but he can also be serious and take charge when necessary. The kids were adorable in this book and how they interacted with Weston and Skylar. So this follows around a country singer who's kind of taking a break from fame and whatever, wanting to like record her own individual album and like kind of put her heart and soul and have a passion project into it, with Ford Grant from Wild Love, who runs a recording studio. And she has nowhere to stay because she shows up early, so she has to stay in West's bunkhouse. So there's a forced proximity thing going on. He's also a horse trainer and I'm a big horse girl. I thought it was a very accurate representation of like living life with horses. This hands down could be the spiciest book that Elsie's ever written. It is written so effing well. I had literally the best time. My least favorite book of September was God of Wrath by Rena Kent. This is another one that I feel like is an unpopular opinion. I just thought this book was really repetitive. I got to about 50% and I just decided to DNF the book. I could be convinced to jump back into it when I'm in a dark romance mood, but this was just really a miss for me, which sucks because the Goodreads rating on this is like 4.5 stars or something like that. I thought that the dialogue didn't feel very natural between the characters. I also didn't really like Jeremy. It feels like that like really immature language that I just like don't really care for. I'm going to keep going with the series because I did really like God of Pain and God of Malice was okay, but I really want to read God of Fury. So I'm going to keep pushing through the series so I can get to that one and sort of see what all the hype is about. My favorite book of October was The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This book is fucking amazing. If you haven't read this, it is absolutely worth all of the hype that it gets on social media. It's a college sports romance and it's a hockey romance, but there's also such realistic conflict between all of the characters and they all have really real things happening to them that makes them feel really relatable, but at the same time, it's super funny. Garrett Graham is like your typical cocky hockey star, and then Hannah is looking for somebody to sort of like re-spark her love for intimacy, and she needs somebody to sort of like practice with that's like low stakes and just like a good vibe. And so she ends up picking Garrett, who she is tutoring, kind of like have a deal where they sort of like help each other out. Literally, I'm not lying, this is a 6-star book. Hands down, one of my favorite hockey romances I've ever read. One of my favorite sports romances I've ever read. College sports romances don't really do it for me because like I exited college quite a while ago and I just don't find them to be super relatable. And typically they're pretty unrealistic, but this didn't feel that way at all. This was chef's kiss, literally amazing. Least favorite book of October is gonna be The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I just don't know if Riley Sager books are for me. I just didn't like it. Like I just thought it was boring. I saw the plot twist coming. I don't know, I just thought it was kind of predictable. Favorite book of November was Until I Get You. This book was an absolute and total surprise. This is more of like a romantic suspense. There's just something in this that literally is like crack. I could not put it down. This is another dark hockey romance. So he's an NHL player. I didn't really know what was gonna happen next and it just had my eyes literally fucking glued to the page. I could not look away. I ended up reading this in one day, like literally 24 hours. My least favorite book of November, unfortunately, was The Striker by Anna Huang. I had such high hopes for this. It didn't even really feel like a sports romance. It's about soccer players in the UK, so footballers or whatever the heck they're called. The plot felt really disjointed to me and I didn't really feel very connected to the characters. I feel like they didn't really have very good chemistry either. I don't know, overall this was a flop, and like on top of that, it was egregiously long. My favorite book of December was Garnet Flats by Devney Perry. Holy shit, this book is so good. It's like a second chance romance, and this follows around a professional boxer and then Talia, who is a doctor. There's so much groveling. There's so much delicious tension. There's so much everything. I love a second chance romance. It's probably one of my favorite tropes ever. This absolutely blew me away. It's my favorite book in the series so far. This series just keeps getting better, so I'm excited to continue it in 2025. Least favorite book of December was Beyond the Thistles by Samantha Young. The amount of bad things that happened to this FMC was literally so unrealistic that I just could not get behind the plot by the time that like the 5th or 6th bad thing happened to her. I'm like, this poor girl, can we just give her an effing break? And the dialogue between the two main characters just like felt really cringy, if I'm being honest. Overall, I think it had potential to be good. It just wasn't. I'm willing to give the other ones in the series a try though, because I have realized with interconnected standalones with romance authors, the first one is typically not going to be the best because it's kind of like them warming up. Like there's not really world building going on, but they learn and grow as they go as a writer, which like makes total sense. But this one was like 2.75 stars at best. If you have any opinions on any of these books, let me know down in the comments, or if they're on your TBR for 2025, let me know. All of the best ones absolutely should be on your TBR because they are all top tier. We'll see how I go with this booktube thing. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm kind of just flying by the seat of my pants. Make sure to like and subscribe for more book content because I will keep it coming. But as always, I love you guys and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.